What's going on, everybody? This is your boy, the Scripture Plug.Albert, man. I'm coming at y'all today with episode number two of Useful Charts and its church history. So right now, they're gonna be breaking down what is going on with the schism. How did the split happen between Eastern Orthodox and Catholicism? So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's vibe out. We about to do some major things right here. We about to learn a lot today. Learn a lot today because this brother right here is bringing the heat. He's bringing the heat with the charts.
Hi, this is Matt Baker.
What up?
Welcome to episode 2 in my series on the family tree of Christian denominations. In episode 1, we looked at the origins of Christianity, how it started off as a sect of Judaism, but then went on to become a separate religion.
Hmm.
We then discussed the first 2 church councils, which clarified what the major beliefs of Christianity were, and which produced the Nicene Creed. Finally, we looked at the next 2 councils in which we started to get some smaller branches of Christianity splitting off from the rest, such as the Church of the East and the Oriental Orthodox churches. So in today's video, we're going to switch gears and focus on 2 of the largest branches of the tree, the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church. Both of these very large churches can actually be divided into various smaller churches. So we'll be looking at how each group is organized, as well as the history behind how they ended up that way. Of special note will be some very recent developments involving the church in Ukraine. But first, I want to point out that throughout this series, I'll be collaborating with the YouTube channel Ready for Harvest. As many of you already know, Ready
Oh,
for
we don't need to
Harvest
hear this.
is all about Christian
Shout out to them, though.
denominations, talking about their history.
Hey, ready to harvest. Go check them out.
I therefore want to clarify that whenever I show a group going extinct on this chart, I'm always referring to the original group, not to similar groups that may arise later. This is especially important with regard to Jewish Christians. I got a lot of comments from people pointing out that Messianic Jews still exist. Again, this is correct. However, Messianic Jews do not trace a line all the way back to the original Jewish Christians from
Mm.
ancient times. Rather, Messianic Jews are more recent converts. So, in order to make things more clear, I decided to change the label Jewish Christians to Ebionite Christians, the Ebionites being one of the early Jewish Christian sects,
Mhm.
similar to or the same as the Nazarenes. I also received several requests to include the Samaritans and the Karaites, so let's go ahead and add them to the chart. Now, some people, including the Samaritans themselves, think that the Samaritan religion is a direct continuation of the religion followed by the northern kingdom of Israel prior to the Babylonian exile. However, from an academic perspective, it's more likely that the Samaritans emerged early on in the Second Temple period, when around 450 BCE, they built their own temple on Mount Gerizim. Now, there's a lot more I could say about the Samaritans, but since this series is focused on Christianity, I'll perhaps have to make a separate video about them at some other point.
Mhm. Let's stick with
Now,
the
what about the
Christians.
Karaites? If you haven't heard about them, basically the Karaites are Jews who do not accept the teachings of the early rabbis, as
Yo, one thing I like about this fella right here, so he's breaking down right now what's going on and how some people in the comments were like, "Oh, what about these people? What about these people?" So you know what? He's like, "Yo, you right. Let me go ahead and add them." That's right there. That's a good YouTuber right there. He's taking criticism and saying, "Okay, well, how can I make it better?" And then going to make it better, and also re-explaining what he's talking about. So that's awesome. I love this fella. He's doing a lot of good work. Bless his heart. Let's continue on. Let's get back into it.
recorded in the Talmud. According to some people, they are the direct descendants of the Sadducees. However, the scholarly consensus is that this is not the case, because the Karaites did not actually emerge until the medieval period, which means that it is better to see them as an early breakaway group from Rabbinic Judaism, rather than being completely distinct from it. Another such breakaway group is Beta Israel, aka the Ethiopian Jews. Again, some people theorize that this group can trace their origins to pre-rabbinic times. However, it is clear from their language and customs that they did originally have connections to rabbinic Jews, but then this connection was severed for many centuries until they were once again reunited with the rest of Judaism in modern times.
Mm.
Okay, let's now turn our attention back to early Christianity.
There we
I
go. That's what we
mentioned
want to talk about.
last time something called the Pentarchy. The Pentarchy emerged in some sort of official way around the time of the Council of Chalcedon. Basically, by this point, there were 5 major cities that were key centers of Christianity within the Roman Empire. Originally, there had been just 3: Rome, Alexandria, and Antioch. But when Constantinople became the new capital of the Roman Empire, it became important as well. And then there was, of course, Jerusalem, where the whole thing began. So by 451, the leaders of the church recognized 5 key cities. Each was called a patriarchate because each was governed by a special bishop called a patriarch, meaning father. Now, I changed the chart a little bit to make what happened after the Council of Chalcedon a bit more clear. Basically, the majority of Christians in Alexandria, Egypt, and in Antioch, Syria, did not agree with the Chalcedonian decisions. They therefore broke away from the rest and eventually became known as Oriental Orthodoxy, which is distinct from Eastern Orthodoxy.
Hmm.
These days, the 2 largest churches within Oriental Orthodoxy are the Coptic Orthodox Church in Egypt and the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, which became independent from the Patriarch of Alexandria.
Yo, shout out to my Ethiopian Orientals and Coptics. I know a few of them from being on TikTok and whatnot. And I tell you what, those are Oriental Ethiopians. Excuse me. They are prideful. They'll let you know about their history. First time I seen one come into a room, it was a Christian chat, and it was basically talking about just different beliefs and different denominations and stuff like that. And they just came in loud and proud, like, "Yo, this is who we are. This is what we believe. We're the oldest church and all this other stuff." And I was like, "All right, cool. Go ahead. Do your thing. Be happy, be merry, all that fun stuff." But it was cool to actually hear from actual person who falls under that umbrella. And also, I got shout out to Nev, by the way. If I'm not mistaken, she's Egyptian Coptic. So being able to be on YouTube and have these videos and share them with people around the world, you get to hear about people's different stories and hear about where they come from. Because again, prior to jumping on YouTube and learning about this stuff and TikTok, I wouldn't have known anything about any of these. It was just Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, and then obviously Hinduism and all these other beliefs and religions and stuff like that. But being able to do this, be able to learn about all these other things is so beautiful, and I get to really get a grasp and understanding of the history that we have as Christians. And I tell you what, it makes me better for it.
In 1959.
Thank God.
However, I should point out that the church in Ethiopia has its own very unique history that goes all the way back to ancient times. And as I discussed in my series on Who Wrote the Bible, Ethiopian Christians have a unique version of the Bible that includes several extra books
I got all the
that
books.
are not found in most other Bibles. Also, since I mistakenly didn't show a photo of the Ethiopian patriarch last time, I wanted to show him this time. This is Patriarch Abun Matthias,
All right
the
then.
spiritual leader of around 40 million Ethiopian Christians.
Baboon.
Okay,
Shout
so
out.
let's now return to the Pentarchy. Although most of the Christians in Alexandria and Antioch became Oriental Orthodox, a minority did not. That's why I also show dotted lines that stay within the Eastern Orthodox section, which I've now decided to color red. The Christians in these areas that sided with Eastern Orthodoxy were originally known as Melkites, meaning imperial. That term will pop up again later, so I thought I'd point out its meaning now.
All right.
But
Bet.
here's the thing. In the 600s CE, Alexandria, Antioch, and Jerusalem came under the control of the new religion of Islam. Therefore, these cities became less important in terms of Christian leadership, leaving only Rome and Constantinople as the 2 main patriarchates. Therefore, a bit of a power struggle eventually developed between Rome and Constantinople. On one side, there was the fact that Rome, as the original seat of imperial power, had been given, back in the early days of the Pentarchy, a sort of precedence over the other 4 cities. However, on the other side, there was the fact that Constantinople was now the seat of imperial power, and it was the Greek emperor in Constantinople that now appointed the Latin pope over in Rome. As the centuries went by, Rome and Constantinople drifted further and further apart as Europe became divided between the Holy Roman Empire in the west and the Byzantine Empire in the
Mm.
east. This
Yo, real quick. Christopher, let me know in the comments. I know you will. I don't necessarily think you have to do it now, but if he gets anything wrong, let me know because obviously that's your belief. Being a Catholic or whatnot, so you probably have a lot of understanding. I don't know what his particular belief is. I don't even know if he's Christian, the guy who does useful charts. But if anything's wrong, don't be afraid to let me know because again, I'm trying to learn for real. I'm trying to understand for real. Now, granted, I had a spammer, a slime ball, if you will, in my comments on the last video saying that, oh, this wasn't true, this wasn't true, this wasn't true. And, had to go back and look at it and found out that, everything he was saying was very much so lacking. But I do want to know for real. So, if there is something that's been mistaken or something that's been left out, let me know because I want to, again, learn and really get an understanding of the history behind it and the understanding of where the schism happened and also the Catholics' view on everything that's going on. And also for anybody who's watching that's Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox, let me know too. What's your view on what happened and exactly if he's speaking on facts or if he's kind of omitting some things or whatnot. But let's get back into it. Let's keep going.
came to a head in
Oh,
1054
I bet.
with what's called the Great Schism. The Great Schism can be blamed on many different things, but I'd like to point out just two. One was a disagreement over whether or not Rome and its bishop, the Pope, was the head over the entire Christian church. According to Constantinople, the Pope was just a first among equals. In other words, he held a special place of honor, but in practical terms,
They got to get a better picture. That brother look creepy as all get out. I would not want that hanging in my house. He just looks like he's staring through your soul, but in a creepy way. Like I can see that picture coming to life in a scary movie somewhere.
he held no more
No
power
disrespect.
than the Patriarch of Constantinople. However, according to Rome, the Pope did have actual authority over the entire church. The other major difference related to the Nicene Creed, which I discussed in episode 1. In fact, I created a bit of a stir because, as an example, I showed the version of the creed used these days by Catholics and Protestants, rather than the one used by Eastern Orthodox Christians. The difference is this line here, known
Mm,
as the filioque, meaning and from the Son. So, as you can see, Catholics and Protestants say that the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father and the Son,
mm,
whereas the Eastern Orthodox Christians say that he proceeds from the Father only. Because of
right.
these differences and many others, East and West parted ways in 1054.
All right, so that was part of the schism, right? So let me know. Obviously, if you're a Catholic, you're gonna have some sort of feeling about it. If you're Eastern Orthodox, you're gonna feel about it. Let you know my feelings at first. My initial feelings is to me, whether or not Catholics are right or Eastern Orthodox are right. I mean, obviously, I think again how he said that Protestants usually fall under the Catholic belief. So I'm a Protestant, so I guess I fall under that belief as well. But for me, I truly believe that as long as you understand who God is and the fact that the Father is God, the Son is God, and the Holy Spirit is God, uh, yo, Demi, what's up? You have a blessed Sunday as well, and good morning. Sending love to you from Greece. Yo, Demi's the greatest, y'all. She's amazing. But so my understanding is that as long as you understand who the Father is, who the Son is, who the Holy Spirit is, that is basically, for me to let you know that you're a Christian. I don't necessarily think that you have to get into the real depth and philosophical and logical breakdown of what the Trinity is. If you feel that way, let me know in the comments. Why do you think that is the case? But for me, I think there's just been a lot of things that come into play that are unnecessary, which causes so many just different splits and denominations and things of that nature. But again, I feel like as long as you have that understanding of who the Trinity is, no matter what umbrella or what denomination you fall under, you'll be all right, and you'll be able to have a relationship with God. Now, some would say, oh, if you don't follow the full traditions and sacraments of either Catholicism or Eastern Orthodoxy, then you won't be able to experience the fullness of God. But I'm not gonna hold you. I'm not gonna front. I know a lot of Protestant folk that are out in the streets, being foot soldiers preaching the gospel and going into the places that Jesus would have went into, and really trying to do the best to uplift people and give back to people. Whereas I also know a lot of Eastern Orthodox and Catholics that are kind of lacking that particular area. So if that's what make somebody, and again, I know it's person by person too. By no means think that I'm speaking to all Catholics or all Eastern Orthodox, because again, not all Protestants do that. There's a lot of lazy Protestants out there too. So, but again, whatever the fullness of the Spirit is, I know that in my life, what God has done for me, I've seen what He has done for other people, and I understand His glory in that manner. So if I'm missing out on some things, maybe I'll find out soon. I'm still on this search. I'm still on this journey to figure out where I fit and what's best for me and where the Lord is calling me. But as of right now, still Protestant, still doing my thing, still understanding again what I can, learn from everybody else. But ultimately, knowing that God is real in my life and relevant in my life. So far, that's where I'm at. So let me know in the comments. Is it a big deal for you guys when it comes to the filioque and exactly the spiration or the begottenness of the Son and or the Holy Spirit? So let your boy know in the comments. But until then, let's keep going.
Now, I should make it clear that it would be incorrect to say that the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church started only in 1054. Instead, it would be more accurate to say that they both started in the first century and that they were simply united up until 1054. So, what about the popes then? I mean, the ones from Peter up until Pope Leo IX in 1054. Well, the difference is that Catholics claim that those popes were the leaders of the entire Christian church, whereas in the view of the Eastern Orthodox Church, these popes were simply the bishops of Rome, who, as I mentioned earlier, were, in their minds, simply the first among equals. Okay, so let's now look at how each of these churches are organized today, starting with the Eastern Orthodox Church, which sees itself as a single church, but can actually be divided into 15 equal churches called
Mm,
autocephalous churches.
would have never
Basically,
guessed it.
being autocephalous means that the leader of that church does not have to answer to anyone higher up, other than God, of course.
Right.
However, the Patriarch of Constantinople is given special precedence and is considered first among equals. This is why the Patriarch of Constantinople is called the Ecumenical Patriarch.
Mm.
Ecumenical meaning representing more than one group.
All right, so he's like the LeBron James, right? And what I mean by that is obviously LeBron James is a player, but LeBron James has a lot of power when it comes to what it is that he does for an organization, whether it be, whether people want to admit it or not, the picks and everything, the influence on who to pick up or who to draft or whatever the case may be. So he has a lot of power in that manner. So that's what that seems like. It seems like it's a huge team, and then there's different players with different roles. You got your role players, you got your bench players, you got everything else, and then you got your star of stars. So that's what it seems like right now that they're referring to when it comes to Eastern Orthodox, and again how they have so just many different committees, and again the difference between them and obviously in this manner anyway the Pope is that there's just the one guy that's higher. Now they have the cardinals and the bishops and all that, but it's still that one guy that's above everybody. So I just like to break things down like that to where it makes sense to me. So yeah, I'm going to use LeBron. Let me know if that sounds accurate or not in the sense of what obviously we're referring to.
Currently, that position is held by Bartholomew I.
Shout out.
Initially, the Eastern Orthodox Church consisted of only 5 autocephalous churches. These were the 4 out of the 5 patriarchates from the Pentarchy, as well as the Church of Cyprus, which had always been seen as being independent all the way back to ancient times. However, over time, more autocephalous churches were added by Constantinople, such as the Bulgarian Orthodox Church in 927, the Serbian Orthodox Church in 1219, and most importantly, the Russian Orthodox Church in
Mm.
1589. I say most importantly because nowadays the Russian Orthodox Church is by far the largest of the various Eastern Orthodox churches. It is currently led by Kirill, who holds the title Patriarch of Moscow. The Church
That
of
brother
Greece
dressing.
and the Romanian Orthodox Church were the next 2 Eastern Orthodox churches to become autocephalous in 1850 and 1885, which is after each became independent from the Ottoman Empire. The remaining 5 churches all became autocephalous in the 20th century, or in the case of the Macedonian church, just last year in 2022,
Oh, wow.
which leaves two gray areas to discuss. The first being the Orthodox Church in America, which originated as a branch of the Russian Orthodox Church. The
Yo, real quick side note, I had a Russian Orthodox fella. He was, in the vicinity of where my job is. I work at a, drug rehab facility that's faith-based, and he came and he, held service for us at one time, and it was such a beautiful thing because he really couldn't speak the language like that, but he could, but his message and his story was such a beautiful thing, and he was able to share not only with the staff at my job, but, the clients as well, and it was such a beautiful thing to be able to see also a different view because, my boss is a Wesleyan pastor, so obviously that's still part of the Protestant sect or whatnot. So to be able to hear and see from a different perspective, especially from a different country, was such a beautiful thing. So, man, shout out to the Russian Orthodox because yeah, that brother had an amazing story and amazing service that we had that time. So that was a beautiful thing to be a part of.
Patriarch of Moscow currently recognizes the American Church as being autocephalous, but the Patriarch of Constantinople does not. When it comes to Ukraine, we get the opposite situation. There, the Patriarch of Constantinople recognizes the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, but the Patriarch of Moscow does not. And it's even more complicated than that. And that's because the history of Russia and Ukraine is, well, a bit complicated.
Mm,
You see, both countries trace their origins back to a medieval state called Kievan Rus, which was centered on the city of Kiev. When Christianity first reached that area, the church there was known as the Ruthenian Orthodox Church. However, over time, Kievan Rus disintegrated, and instead the city of Moscow became the dominant city in the region. It was at this point that the Russian Orthodox Church was established, replacing the Ruthenian Orthodox Church. Eventually, all Eastern Orthodox Christians in Ukraine ended up under the jurisdiction of Moscow. However, after the fall of the Russian Empire, some churches in Ukraine declared independence and started calling themselves the Ukrainian Autocephalous Orthodox Church,
that's
or
too long.
UAOC. This church operated separately from the UOC, which still came under the jurisdiction of Moscow. This is why later the letters MP were added to the name to make it clear that it is part of the Moscow Patriarchate.
Mm,
To complicate matters further, a third Ukrainian church emerged after the fall of the Soviet Union. This one called itself the UOC KP, the KP standing for Kiev Patriarchate. Now, obviously, having 3 different Eastern Orthodox churches in one country is not ideal. So, in 2018, there was an attempt to merge all 3 churches into a single church, which would become known as the Orthodox Church of Ukraine. The merger was mostly successful, and now around 80% of Eastern Orthodox Christians in Ukraine belong to the OCU. However, it wasn't entirely successful. For one thing, there are still some churches that are attached to Moscow, although since the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022, these are becoming less. And officially, the UOCMP has now cut ties with the Russian Orthodox Church. Secondly, there was also a disagreement between the newly appointed leader of the OCU, Epiphanius, and the former leader of the UOCKP, Philaret. This disagreement led to Philaret attempting to revive the UOCKP, although
those got to be the flyest two brothers I done seen in a minute. They are here with the black on, the white top. I don't know that I'm sure it has a name to it. The chains on, looking fresh, and their names is dope too. I ain't going front. They look like they could be characters in like Assassin's Creed or something like that, but like good characters. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to them, man. They out here just staying fly. All right, go ahead then.
so far he's had only limited success. So basically, while there is still some disunity, the new OCU is now the main Eastern Orthodox Church in Ukraine. Now, before we move on, I do want to point out the growing rift between the Ecumenical Patriarch of Constantinople and the Patriarch of Moscow. For over 500 years now, Moscow has seen itself as being the third Rome. And since the Russian Orthodox Church is by far the largest of the various Eastern Orthodox churches, it has at times been seen as a sort of rival to the leadership of Constantinople. In fact, when the Ecumenical Patriarch recognized the new Orthodox Church of Ukraine, Moscow decided to break communion with Constantinople, which basically means that they're no longer on good speaking terms. This was made even worse when Patriarch Kirill came out as a strong supporter of the war on Ukraine, whereas Patriarch Bartholomew strongly opposed it. So it's yet to be seen whether or not the current schism will turn out to be a landscape-changing permanent one.
Mm,
Okay, let's now talk about the Roman Catholic Church, by far the largest church in all of Christianity, with well over 1 billion members representing more than 50% of all Christians. Now, when most people refer to the Roman Catholic Church, what they're really referring to is the Latin Church, which is
mm,
actually just one of 24 churches that make up the entire Roman Catholic Church. The other 23 churches are Eastern Catholic churches, which we'll be talking about shortly. But since 99% of Catholics belong to the Latin Church, let me take a moment to explain how the church organizes those 1 billion plus members.
man.
So, unlike how the Eastern Orthodox churches are primarily based in single countries with perhaps some churches overseas, mainly for expats, the Roman Catholic Church is spread all over the world. So, what they do is divide the world into a few hundred provinces, like this. So, for example, although I'm not a Catholic, I live within the Catholic province of Vancouver, which includes most of British Columbia. Within that ecclesiastical province are 5 dioceses, and each one of those dioceses is led by a bishop. However, one of those dioceses is an archdiocese, led by an archbishop,
Mm,
who, in addition to being in charge of his diocese, is also in charge of the entire province. Now, within each diocese are a bunch of parishes, or local churches, each run by a parish priest. So the closest Catholic church to me happens to be this one, although I also happen to live fairly close to a cathedral. Growing up, I always thought
Random side note. I'm sorry that I stopped it right here, but random side note because this is kind of I had this question. I was watching this video, this movie, and it's from a book not too long ago, and it's via Archbishop Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama, and they basically talked about how they kind of conduct themselves or how they've learned how to deal with the hurt and anguish and everything else that they've been going through in their particular lives and what they've been doing for their particular communities. So, if you know in the comments, let me know: is Archbishop Desmond Tutu a Catholic or is he Orthodox, or what sect does he kind of fall under? Because I don't recall actually hearing them say, and maybe they did, but I just probably wasn't paying attention. But if you do know, let me know in the comments. That would be greatly appreciated.
a cathedral was simply an extra big and fancy church. Well, that's not quite the case. Each diocese has just one cathedral, and it's called that because that's where you'll find the bishop, or archbishop, for that diocese. Of course, the most notable thing about the Catholic Church is that above all the bishops and archbishops in the hierarchy is the Pope, who is the leader of the entire church. That person is currently Pope Francis, who is also the bishop in charge of the Diocese of Rome.
Yikes.
So basically, whoever is in charge of Rome is in charge of the entire church. Now, like I mentioned earlier, in addition to the main Latin Church, there are also 23 other smaller churches, which are the Eastern Catholic churches. These operate independently from the main church, but are still under the jurisdiction of the Pope. Of the 23 Eastern Catholic churches, I am going to point out just the 10 largest. Let's start here at the bottom. These 3 churches all trace their origins to the Church of the East, which I mentioned earlier. Basically, what happened is that in 1552, there was a schism in the Church of the East. that resulted in some congregations remaining in the Church of the East. These are the ones that became the Assyrian Church of the East and the Breakaway Ancient Church of the East. But at the same time, there were other congregations that decided to join the Catholic Church instead. These became known as the Chaldean Catholic Church. Then there are the St. Thomas Christians from India. These Christians trace their origins back to the Apostle Thomas, who supposedly traveled all the way to India in the first century. At
Hey,
some
okay.
point, though, the Christians in India became associated with the Church of the East. But then later, some joined the Oriental Orthodox churches, becoming known as the Indian Orthodox Church, while others joined the Catholic Church, becoming known as the Syro-Malabar Catholic Church. The Syro-Malankara Catholic Church is also based in India and consists of congregations that broke away from the Indian Orthodox Church. So note that there are two different Eastern Catholic churches based in India. The Syro-Malabar one follows Eastern Syrian traditions, whereas the Syro-Malankara one follows Western Syrian traditions. The largest Eastern Catholic Church is actually the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, with over 5 million members. This church traces its roots back to the Ruthenian Orthodox Church that I mentioned earlier. So basically, back in the 1500s, there were some Christians in Ukraine that didn't want to join the Russian Orthodox Church, so they joined the Catholic Church instead. Now, there's also a Ruthenian Greek Catholic Church, but it actually has nothing to do with the Ruthenian Orthodox Church. It actually formed when certain congregations broke away from the Serbian Orthodox Church. Then there's the Armenian Catholic Church, which, as you might have guessed, is based on those who broke away from the main Armenian Church, which is associated with Oriental Orthodoxy.
I just want to give this brother right here a shout out because man, the work that he's putting in to do all this, I can only imagine the hours and hours and hours he's putting in. And unfortunately, by the way, pray for this brother because if I'm not mistaken, as I was, oh no, never mind, never mind. Pray for him anyway though. Pray for him anyway because obviously, we all need prayers. But the work that he's putting in, man, I can even see you, Demi. Have a good one. Appreciate you. Much love to you. But I can only imagine the hard work and the dedication that takes to like make this kind of content, not only to make the slides, but also to do the research and everything like that. Shout out to him. If you're not following him, y'all need to follow him. By the way, shout out to my boy Christopher, who's the one who put me on this. So hey, man, appreciate you, Christopher. Much love to you. And man, let's keep going. Let's keep going.
That leaves us with the Coptic Catholic Church, which broke away from the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate in Alexandria, and these three, which all broke away from the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate of Antioch. Which means that when it comes to the original Pentarchy, we now have way more than 5 patriarchs for 5 cities. So, as I mentioned last time, there's an Oriental Orthodox Patriarch of Alexandria who uses the title of Pope, but there's also a Greek Orthodox one. Well, now you know that there's a third Patriarch of Alexandria too, a Catholic one who is the leader of the Coptic Catholic Church. In Antioch, it's even more complicated. There's the Oriental Orthodox Patriarch and the Greek Orthodox Patriarch. But there's also 3 different Catholic patriarchs, representing the 3 different Catholic churches based in Syria. Now, I should mention, which I failed to do last time, that the city of Antioch is now actually located in Turkey. But for most of history, it was associated with the region called Syria. In Rome, of course, it's simple. There's just one patriarch, Pope Francis. And in Constantinople, it's mostly simple. There's mainly just Bartholomew I, the spiritual leader of the Eastern Orthodox Church.
Big
Although
Bart.
technically the Armenian Church has a patriarch there too. Finally, in Jerusalem, there are 3 patriarchs. There's the main patriarch, who is Eastern Orthodox, but there's also a Catholic patriarch who represents the Latin Church, as well as an Armenian patriarch. So that takes care of the official branches of the Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches. But before I go, I want to point out a few unofficial or independent branches. In 1870, the Roman Catholic Church held a council that is now known as Vatican I. One of the things that the council decided was that the Pope is infallible.
Mm.
Now, this doesn't actually mean that the Pope never makes mistakes or that he has the power to radically change church doctrine. It actually only applies to special statements that are clearly made ex cathedra, meaning from the chair. Well, there were some Catholics that disagreed with the idea of papal infallibility, among other things. And there happened to be an archbishop in the Dutch city of Utrecht who had already gone independent. So basically, after Vatican I, a bunch of other priests joined with that archbishop to form the Old Catholic Church, also known as the Church of Utrecht. Today, they are led by this man here. Something similar happened in the 1960s, following the council known as Vatican II. One of the main things to come out of that council was the decision to hold Mass in local languages instead of Latin. Again, there were some Catholics who disagreed with the various decisions made at the council. This time, those who separated and formed independent Catholic churches became known as sedevacantists, which is a word based on the Latin for empty chair.
Mm.
Basically, these Catholics believe that the office of Pope has been vacant ever since Vatican II.
Oh,
One
wow.
of the main sedevacantist churches is the Congregation of Mary Immaculate Queen in Nebraska. The Eastern Orthodox Church also has independent branches. There, the separatists are known as Old Calendarists or True Orthodox. The main issue for them was the switch that the Eastern Orthodox Church made in the 1920s from using the old Julian calendar to the new Julian calendar. Today, most Old Calendarists are found in Romania and Greece. Okay, so that was a
Mm.
look at the Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox branches of Christianity. In the next episode, we'll be moving on to the Protestants and
Yeah.
Restorationists. And
Yeah.
this is where the tree starts to really go in a bunch of different directions. So you can expect that there will be several episodes on the Protestants and Restorationists before we're done.
Heck
Episode
yeah.
3 is likely to come out mid March. Until then, leave a comment with your thoughts.
Mm.
Thanks for
Man,
watching.
no, thank you. Appreciate your work, brother. Appreciate your work. So, man, with that being said, y'all seen it. I never knew. I never knew there's just that much that went into the church history when it comes to Eastern Orthodox and how many different churches there were, and the different leadership that goes into it, as well as the Roman Catholic Church as well. So that's just a beautiful thing. Just continue to learn and whatnot. Overall thoughts, man, when it comes to why churches break apart and why churches schism and all this other stuff, I think a lot of it just has to do with people wanting to be right. I don't necessarily think that when it comes to the Holy Spirit is causing people to make these, sort of changes and things of that nature. But again, I don't necessarily know because I'm not in those rooms. I'm not a bishop. I'm not the people that are making those particular decisions. But again, ultimately for me, every time I look into whether it be Catholicism or anything else, it all leads me back to the same thing that if you follow and understand who God is, much like I said earlier, I've been blessed in a way that I've been able to ask certain people that I highly respect certain questions. So, for example, I follow somebody on here named Radar Apologetics. If you do not follow him, you should go follow him because he's amazing. He's a Messianic Jew, actual ordained rabbi, and things of that nature. And his knowledge is insane. It is crazy when it comes to just Jewish history and also just biblical history. But when I was able to talk with him at first, I asked him a question because, again, I'm on the search to figure out what exactly is the true truth. And So I asked him. I said, what's the true church? Is it Eastern Orthodox? Is it Catholicism? Is it uh, any other particular church? I can't think of all the ones I have asked off the top of my head. And the simple answer he gave me was, "Yup." I was also able to ask Dr. James White at one point in time, and I asked him the same question, and he was able to say the same thing. He said, "Yup." And then again, now I still have to ask, somebody from the Catholic belief and also the Eastern Orthodox belief. but I was also able to ask Inspiring Philosophies Mike Jones, and he also said the same thing. Yep. So everything that when it comes from, these particular sources, and again, I still have to ask Eastern Orthodox. So hopefully, Lord willing, I'm able to get on probably with Jay Dye or somebody like that and ask him, see what he has to say. Or even now, Sam Shamoon has also stated, even though I think he's like leaning towards Catholic, I still don't think he's actually picked where he wants to be, but I think he's really leaning towards Catholicism. He even said on a recent stream that, basically the same thing that, if you want the fullness of the Holy Spirit, then you would do the traditions and sacraments of the Catholic Church, but not that Protestants still aren't, the part of the true church. So again, no matter where I go, it seems like that's the case. That the true church is the true church. And no matter whether what information I get or where I learn it from, it always just seems to come down to the belief of, do you know who God is? Do you understand um, what he's done for you on the cross and things of that nature. So again, until I find out some other stuff, that's kind of where I'm at still. I'm still want to look into the different churches and whatnot. And again, shout out to my boy Christopher who requested these some months back. He was patient with me. I was supposed to record and do some of these videos for reactions a long time ago, but I was putting them off because they was kind of long. And finally, I got to the chance I was able to do them live, and it makes more sense to do that way. So again, shout out to him for being patient with me and being somebody rocking with me. So appreciate you so very much, Christopher. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Appreciate you guys who are going to watch this eventually. Love you guys. Appreciate you guys. I'll catch you guys next week with episode 3, talking about the Protestants. We're going to be in here doing our thing. With that being said, catch y'all next time. I'm out. Oh, wait. Also, I should be hopefully starting to do my testimonies. And what I mean by that is I want to have a bunch of people, Christians. I don't care if they're famous YouTubers. I don't care who. They could just be Joe from down the street. I want them to come on my particular platform and share their testimony, and that's what I also want to do with these live streams. So be on the lookout for that. And yeah, so if you're someone listening and you have a story that you want to tell, you have a testimony you want to tell, hit me up on the email that I believe is uh, on my channel, and hopefully that's the one. Anyway, yes, it is the one. So hit that email up, and I'll make sure that if you want to share your testimony, we're gonna get together, we're gonna work it out because that's what I want to do too. Not only do I just want to do reactions, I also want to do other content where we can spread the gospel and spread the truth and spread people's testimony because that's a beautiful thing to be. I want to be where I'm at without people's testimony. So, with that being said, I'll catch y'all next time. I'm out.